Chuck says, remember when good job Nebraska getting out of the fast fire mode was a thing from the national guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Happens, I guess. So last week, Max Olson of The Athletic did a overachievers and underachievers. In every part of their State of the Program series, which was their own team-by-team preview of the upcoming season, there would be a graphic. There would be a chart for every team that they previewed that compared its recruiting performance with its on-field performance. And it was just a 4-year snapshot, which essentially encompasses the entire roster for the most part. And we observed that when it came to Nebraska's, they basically had two parallel lines. But unfortunately, A, they weren't overlapping, and B, the recruiting line was much higher than the performance line. In other words, Nebraska was grossly underperforming what it had recruited.
Yeah.
Nebraska, on average, has been around a 20th place recruiter, but they use the Massey composite, which is one of the analytics scales, just for consistency's sake.
Yeah.
According to the Massey composite, Nebraska has been anywhere from about a 65th to a 75th place football team. So they've recruited at a top 20 level, but they've played at a 65 to 75th level.
And so you asked Mitch at the time, like, is this the biggest gap?
Is this the biggest gap? Well, the good news is it's not. It's only the 7th biggest gap of the Power 5 schools. According to, again, this is from The Athletic. Max
just tweeted
Olson,
out the story.
Arkansas's got a 4-year average gap of 73 spots behind where it recruits.
Dude, that is such a large separation. I just tweeted out a screenshot of the underachievers in the Power 5. Basically, everybody 2 through 10 is bunched up. It's 11 spots.
They're all within 11 spots.
And this is 15 spots higher than anybody else.
I mean, Arkansas has been putrid.
Yeah.
Really, really bad.
And
it's a Mike Farron sighting. Quick, get a
And they're a top 30 recruiter.
Farron was just interviewing someone. They were just doing some B-roll at the All-Star game. Oh, there he is again. Quick, someone get a picture. I'm sorry. I get distracted when I see my buddy. I just want to make fun of him on Twitter. But it's crazy. Arkansas is just so far ahead of the field. By the way, the rest of the list, Rutgers is second, underachiever, 58 spots behind. Florida State is a 5th place recruiter, but a 61st ranked team. So they're 56 spots in the negative.
Nuts.
Maryland is minus 55. UCLA minus 55. Illinois minus 53. Then is Nebraska at 51, under par. And under par is bad.
Yeah.
Tennessee minus 49. Vandy 48. Kansas 47.
And how about the fact that all but one of those schools is a top 55 recruiter? So Kansas, I mean, they are near the bottom of the entire sport in terms of their performance at 117. But at least they're only a 70th best recruiter. It is not surprising, obviously. But, man, those numbers are pretty stark. And I guess the one saving grace for Nebraska, John, is that at least they're not Florida State or even Tennessee in that they're not a top 15 recruiter in the country. Because that is getting nothing. That is turning, lemons into poop, not even getting lemonade out of it for Florida State and for Tennessee.
By the way, overachievers, we're just going to look at Power 5. Overachievers, I mean, it's almost like they're taking. You ever driven by the salt domes, where they keep all the salt for salting the roads and stuff? You ever seen a salt dome?
Yeah.
It's like camping out at the salt dome, and you have all these open sores and wounds, and just diving headfirst into the salt pile.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just salt on a wound; it's salt everywhere. The top 2 most overachieving Power 5 schools are Actually, the top three. Actually,
four out of the top five.
No, actually, 5 out of the top 7. Iowa State first.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa second. Wisconsin third. Northwestern fifth. And Kansas State 7th.
And heck, man, you can even throw Oklahoma State in there at 6 and Indiana at 10. So
sure.
Look at that. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 teams from Nebraska's conference are in the top 10. 3 of them are in their division, and those 3 schools are in the top 5 in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Northwestern. Now, once again, not a surprise. I did find it interesting. I don't know if you did that. And Max wrote this. He says the first impression here, this list is pretty darn Midwestern. And it is. In the top 10 alone, Iowa State, Midwestern, Iowa, Midwestern,
sure.
Wisconsin, Northwestern, Oklahoma State,
but
Kansas
what does that tell you?
2 things. One is, and I think Max hit on it as well, how much of this is a reflection of the recruiting industry and that these schools, given that they are in flyover country, I'll just read what Max wrote.
Sure.
It's fair to wonder whether the number of Midwestern schools on this list is in some ways a reflection of the recruiting industry, showing that players on the commit list of schools like Iowa and Iowa State might not get as much exposure and go overlooked. Though there's usually some truth to that, the recruiting services aren't wrong about most of these prospects. The majority of these programs' as classes are made up of 3-star players who have intriguing traits and check the right boxes in terms of fit and need several years of hard work to unlock their potential. It's about development? Is that what you were going to say?
Yes.
Yeah, it's about development.
It's about development.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Could the recruiting rankings be skewed just a little bit?
To the south?
To the south?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, oh, by the way, the performance of the sport has also skewed to the south.
Yeah.
If we look at all of the champions.
Yeah.
But it shows you that there is a certain mindset and a certain workability that has to take place. When you look at all the teams on this overachievers list, the highest ranked recruiter, believe it or not, is Utah at 36th.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them live in the 50s and 60s. The lowest is Boston College at 72. But they pretty much live between 40 and 60 in the recruiting
Barely
rankings.
like an upper half recruiter in the entire sport. Near the bottom of the Power 5.
Nebraska's top 20. Nebraska's top 20. It just shows you with a little bit of elbow grease and
Well,
some
I'd say a lot of elbow grease.
well, some development
a lot of development.
that you should get these kind of results. Right? Even if you develop, and it's hard to quantify, but bear with me. If you develop at a level commensurate with your recruiting, you will get top 20 results.
Mm-hmm.
If you can develop and retain commensurate with your level of recruiting. For these schools, they go above and beyond in the development, which is why they continue to win, especially the Iowas and the Wisconsins and the Northwesterns and the Oklahoma States and the Kansas States.
Yeah, look at those coaches. And how many of the coaches on this list are pretty respected in the sport?
Sure.
You know, Kyle Whittingham in Utah, one of the most respected coaches in the entire sport. What Tom Allen has done over the last couple of years at Indiana, making him one of the most respected coaches in the sport. And then obviously at the top, I mean, Matt Campbell is on every short list right now surrounding Notre Dame post Brian Kelly or Michigan if they decide to move on from Harbaugh. You know, Kirk Ferentz, we know what he's been doing for a couple of decades. You know, Paul Chryst, the same thing. Pat Fitzgerald. You know, sometimes it's nice to feel vindicated in an opinion on a guy. But like Pat Fitzgerald is somebody that I have thought is a really, really good coach. And I have thought, you know, gets poo-pooed around here a little too much. I mean, this backs it up. He overachieves. He overachieves to the 5th best level of any Power 5 school. It's not a surprise when you watch how well that team plays and winning the division a couple of times in the last, 3 years.
Now I'm about to tell you something that's probably going to make you all go, ugh. But I was just updating some things for the upcoming season, and I stumbled upon a chart that I had forgotten I had done back in 2019. And it's kind of similar to this exercise of the Athletic, but I just looked at Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, Texas A&M, Auburn, Notre Dame, Michigan. Those were the only schools I did.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 are obvious; they're all peer schools. Yeah. And then I just kind of I don't even remember why.
I was going to say I don't
remember why I picked.
Was for.
But it was the same exercise of comparing the results with the recruiting rankings.
Yeah.
Do you know, and this is using the the Husker 24/7 or 24/7 Sports composite, that since the start of the internet recruiting era, which is essentially around the year 2000, Nebraska enters this season using a 4-year rolling average, similar to rivals. We're just looking at a 4-year average. So these are the guys who make up the current roster. Nebraska is entering what should be, on paper, its third most talented team since 2000. Based on the raw recruiting rankings.
And that's not taking into account any transfers.
No, this is just recruiting rankings.
What they signed coming in.
This is just recruiting rankings. But this should be, on paper, the third most talented team Nebraska's had since 2000. Only exceeded by 2008
and 10
and 2007.
Oh, wow, interesting. Wow.
Well, 2010 was brought down because Bo's first 2 complete classes
were pretty bad,
were 40th and 26th rated. But the 2007 team, which was all Callahan guys, had an average recruiting class ranking of 18.7. The 2008 team, Bo's first, which still had all of the good Callahan players, had an average recruiting ranking of 18th on a 4-year average. This year, Nebraska comes in with an average recruiting ranking for its 4-year average of 20.25. That's just a little bit better than last year's team, which before this year was the third most talented team on paper Nebraska should have had. And the year before that, 2019, that is the 5th most talented team.
Well, that's the thing. On paper, they've done a better job recruiting under Frost than they have under any coach since Callahan.
On paper, based on players they recruited and players they inherited, by recruiting rankings, Nebraska has 3 of its top 5 most talented teams, 19, 20, and 21. I don't need to tell you what the results have been. Pretty sobering. Coming up next, time to tackle some other issues. Haven't talked about the NBA Finals yet. We have not touched on Conor McGregor.
No.
Yet.
No, we haven't.
Oh, and sadly, football's not coming home.
Well, luckily it is, though. It's 40-something days away now.
Football's not coming home.
47 days away.
On 1620 The Zone.